they're able to cast themselves and retrieve themselves, hook fish themselves, all that stuff. And a lot of that is because I put in the time early on to invest in them learning that stuff.
Hey everyone, John here from Cast and Spear, and today we have Dan Smith back on the podcast from howtocatchanyfish.com, and he's going to talk to you about how to get kids into fishing. I remember I got into fishing when my dad taught me back when we used to camp all the time in Yosemite and in the Eastern Sierras. I feel we can't have too many kids getting into the sport as well as being mindful of the environment. So if you're planning to have kids or have kids already, let's turn them into anglers, and I hope this podcast helps a little bit. All right, please welcome back Dan Smith.
I think one of the keys for kids is you have to recognize how short their attention span is, especially small kids, and be realistic in your planning. So I've gone with friends who brought little kids, and we're out there like 8-10 hours, and there's just no way 6, 7, or very few 6, 7, 8-year-olds are going to have the patience to go on trips that long. So for my kids, I wanted to get them into fishing really young. I probably took them. Well, for one thing, I didn't take them right off the bat. So when they were like 3, 4, they'd ask about, they'd hear about me going fishing and say, "Oh, can I go?" I'd say, "No, you're not old enough." And so that would kind of build up some anticipation for it instead of dragging them along to something they don't want to do, and then they're bored, and then they're kind of scarred for life on it. So I waited a few years until I felt like they had kind of the basic capacity and patience to go. And then I just the first time we went to a place where obviously there were a lot of fish, a lot of small fish, but I was very confident they were going to catch something, because when you're a little kid, tiny fish look pretty big, and they don't care as much about the size. They need action. So I went to a place where there were a lot of small bass that I knew would bite. And then we just fish for 15 or 20 minutes. And then if they wanted to go explore, we do that. If they wanted to go swim for a while, we do that. Come back to the fishing. I didn't fish the way I fish, which is for as long as you possibly can until my hand goes numb from holding the rod. And then I think about maybe going home. Like that's not something that kids are going to want to do off the bat. So you have to be, you have to really make it about them as opposed to, taking them on a trip that you would want to go on and just bringing them along. Because I feel like not too many kids are going to have a good experience with fishing if they, if they're just kind of brought along and dad's, mostly focused on catching some fish, himself and maybe helping them a little bit, but making them endure, long boat rides, long car rides, lots of sitting. So you have to be realistic to what kids can do.
Would you say that kids are more prone to seasickness, so don't take them on boats in the beginning, or?
Yeah. So I think kids are more. I certainly was much more prone to seasickness as a kid than I am now. So you probably want to test that out a little bit before you commit to like a 8-hour trip out in the ocean. So maybe take them on a boat, for a short period of time, see how they do, before doing something where they're committed and they're stuck out there for a long time being miserable. And if it turns out that they are susceptible to seasickness, then you probably want to stick to freshwater for a while.
Absolutely. How much are you actually fishing as the dad, or how much are you untangling knots and reels?
Yeah, so especially when I first started taking my kids, I pretty much assumed I wasn't going to get much fishing in at all. The focus really was on, making sure they were catching fish, making sure they were having a good time, and I'd maybe throw a cast in here or there if I could. Now that they're a little older and a little more self-sufficient, I can actually kind of fish next to them, and they're able to, for the most part, hook their own fish. I still usually land most of the fish for them, and help with some of that handling. But they're able to cast themselves and retrieve themselves, hook fish themselves, all that stuff. And a lot of that is because I put in the time early on to invest in them learning that stuff.
Awesome. Do they like to just catch and release as well, or do you ever do a cookout with them?
Yeah, we've done some of both. Their grandparents live nearby, and their grandparents really appreciate fish, so sometimes we'll keep some fish. We went crappie fishing the other day and got a bunch and brought them back. So we certainly will keep fish now and again, and they're happy to do that sometimes too. Here in the lake we live on, which is the main place we fish together, we pretty much throw everything back.
Well, that does it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you know anybody who has kids and would benefit from this episode, please share with them. That would be awesome. It would mean the world to me. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Go to iTunes and leave a rating or a comment. We read them all. I just want to make sure this podcast is perfect for you. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Keep those lines tight. See ya.